Hello and good morning from Los Angeles. Thank you for joining us for our monthly volume and operations update. I'd like to start by introducing a special guest who will be joining me after my report for what I think will be an important and insightful discussion. Fran Inman is a warehouse and freight transportation expert who is well known in the global logistics industry. Fran is Senior Vice President at Majestic Realty, one of our nation's largest privately held real estate development companies. Recognized as a national leader in the transportation sector, Fran has served on the California Transportation Commission since 2010, including a time as chair. Fran also sits on the California Freight Competitiveness Task Force. She was recently honored with the Peter Drucker Award for Excellence in Supply Chain and Logistics Management. And Fran is quick to always remind us that every day is a freight day. Thank you for joining us, Fran. I look forward to your thoughts on the challenges that our industry is facing.
Thanks, Gene. Delighted to join you today.
Thank you, Fran. Let's start with our February data, then we'll move into operations and a forecast before returning to Fran. And of course, we'll leave plenty of time to respond to your questions. For the month of February, the Port of Los Angeles moved 799,315 20-foot equivalent units. That's a year-over-year increase of 47% compared to last February, but as we know, 1 year ago, global trade slowed to a crawl as the COVID-19 pandemic first hit China and then spread worldwide. Today, we are in the 7th month of a historic import surge driven by unprecedented demands by American consumers. This represents the best February in the port's 114-year history, beating out year 2018 by 10%. It's the 7th consecutive month of year-on-year increases driven by one-way trade of imports. The Port of Los Angeles is averaging about 900,000 20-foot equivalent units over that past 7 months. In February, 78 container vessels berthed, including 4 additional or extra loaders, to meet the high demand from Asia. We ended the month with 23 vessels at anchor, which represents a traditional exchange of 250,000 TEUs in total. Imports came in at more than 412,000 TEUs, 53% above the same time last year. Consumer buying has not let up. With more people getting vaccinated, the latest stimulus checks in the mail, and in-store safety protocols increasing, there are more options for American buyers. The National Retail Federation forecasts its sales among its members will increase in the year 2021 between 6.5 and 8.2% over 2020. February retail sales announced just this morning that they fell 3% versus January. That was largely due to inclement weather across most of the country and on the heels of a very strong January. We'll be monitoring this unprecedented buying pattern closely in the months ahead, as some look to see discretionary spending shifting back towards the service sector. Exports came in at a paltry 101+ thousand TEUs, a 25% decrease compared to last February. The last time the Port of Los Angeles was under 100,000 TEUs exported was in February of the year 2006, 15 years ago. Finally, the ratio of loaded imports to exports reached 4-to-1 this month, one of the highest levels we've seen at the Port of Los Angeles. Exports have now dropped 26 of the last 28 months here in Los Angeles, and it's an issue that is not going away anytime soon. When we look at our empty containers, it's yet another indicator of the loaded export challenge we continue to face. Those empties, at 285+ thousand TEUs in February, were 104% increase, more than double compared to a year ago. And empties were nearly triple the amount of loaded exports that left our docks. The lopsided trade imbalance we are witnessing is now at historic levels. We need a coordinated export plan on a national level that will create American jobs and assist U.S. companies getting back in touch with their customers overseas. More balanced trade will also improve the round-trip economics of service providers and ease the strain that we're seeing today in so many nodes of the supply chain. After 2 months of year 2021, the Port of Los Angeles is tracking 21% above last year's volume. But year-on-year comparisons are very difficult when looking at the dramatic swings that we witnessed last year. Comparing January and February of 21 to a more stable calendar year 2019 shows an increase of 5% in our cargo volume. All this cargo has meant more work opportunities here at the port complex. Week 10, which ended on March 5th, showed a total shift count of registered and casual labor at the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles at just under 50,000 shifts. After 10 weeks of the calendar year, labor shift work is up 29% compared to the same time last year, and up 14% compared to that all-important 4-year average shown by the gray line on your slide. I'm pleased to report that we're getting vaccine into more and more arms of waterfront workers. Thanks to the coordinated efforts of so many, vaccination work progresses here at the Port of Los Angeles and other locations. I'm grateful to Ron Herrera, Los Angeles County Federation of Labor President, who also doubles as the International VP of the Western Region for the Teamsters and Secretary Treasurer of Local 396. And one more hat, he's also the Port Division Director for the Teamsters. He had led the way just last Friday to provide 500 shots to truckers right up the road in Carson, California. We'll continue to advocate for sufficient supplies to vaccinate all transportation workers here in our region of Southern California and beyond. Shifting to operations, here are the views of our anchorage situation and terminals, courtesy of the Port of Los Angeles Police Division, which regularly flies drones for public safety purposes on a weekly basis. Today, San Pedro Bay has 17 container vessels at anchor. Of those, 10 are destined for the Port of Los Angeles. That is the fewest container ships at anchor for the Port of LA since December 24th, when there were also 10 container ships resting outside. Please know, we do expect another 18 container vessels to arrive at the Port of Los Angeles over the next 5 days, so as always, we'll be keeping close watch on this situation. The average time at anchor in February was 7.5 days, about the same as it was in January. Anchorage wait times and other data are updated daily at thesignal.portoptimizer.com. I encourage all of our stakeholders to go there and sign up to get an email delivered every morning. Switching to our terminals, they continue to be very busy with work shifts operating both day and night sides. Terminal land utilization remains above 90%. As I've reported previously, we consider 80% land utilization to be full capacity on our marine terminals here in Los Angeles. Container dwell time on terminals is sitting right now at 4.1 days, down from 5 days I reported last month, but it's still high. Street dwell time awaiting for warehouse space is now at 6.3 days for a 40-foot container, down from the 7.6 days reported a month ago. We need to cut both the terminal and street dwell time to pre-pandemic level, then pick up the work our competitiveness team started to improve efficiencies even further. In our efforts to clear the backlog, here's what needs to be done. First, vaccinate the entire waterfront workforce, including but not limited to our dock workers, truckers, as well as terminal and warehouse workers. Second, we need to get the cargo off the docks and picked up quickly by our import community. We've had many discussions in this area and will continue to do so. And third, we need to manage the increased cargo flow with efficiency tools. We need to share this data specifically across our port community system, employ a deep reservation system for truck movement, and broadly segment cargo to increase gate fluidity, especially at business times during normal hours. We will do everything we can to help get the shipping lines back on schedule, where it's critical that we return a level of certainty to the trans-Pacific trade. On the digitization side, last month we introduced the Control Tower, our latest data tool gleaned from the Port Optimizer to help our partners gain efficiencies and be better prepared for cargo flows. We started sharing real-time views of truck turn times at all Port of Los Angeles marine terminals, as well as historical averages for the Port of LA as a whole and breakdowns by month and day. And today I'm pleased to announce that we'll be adding more new features next week. Our latest enhancement will enable stakeholders to secure a port-wide view of container dwell times, as well as trends and historical content. Additionally, stakeholders will see a high-level overview of current terminal utilization. We'll also include the additional anchorage data as outlined in our daily signal report. This information will be available through our digital platform at tower.portoptimizer.com, along with other key and important data elements. Our goal continues to be sharing as much information as possible to improve visibility, efficiency, and throughput, all of this brought to you as a service of the Port of Los Angeles. Based on the signal data, our look ahead, in addition to the work that we're doing with our key staff, shows that import volume will continue to be strong through the spring and into early summer. The Port of Los Angeles' forecast for March is 830,000 20-foot equivalent units, a projected increase of more than 80% compared to when we looked into the abyss just last March and failed to reach 450,000 container units. Our early forecast for April is 835,000 TEUs, a projected 20% increase over the same time last year. How long this import surge and American buying spree lasts and whether it becomes a new normal remains to be determined, but we continue to be committed to working on ways to further the efficiencies and velocity of cargo through America's port while keeping health and safety of our worker number one. Now, let's get back to Fran. Fran, there are nearly 2 billion square feet of warehouse and distribution space within 60 miles of the port. What are you seeing and experiencing in the marketplace right now?
One word, craziness would be. But first of all, thank you so much. Delighted to be here today to join you. And I just want to give a big thank you to all our supply chain partners. When you flash up the numbers comparing us to last January and February, I just want to say a big hug and a big thank you. You know, I'm the one that coined the phrase every day is a freight day, and then I modified it to every day is an essential freight day. And we all lived that last year. So thank you so much and for all of our partners. And I think what we all saw was really the power of relationships. And, you know, I would have my supply chain partners texting me at 10 o'clock on Saturday night and then making fun of me because I answered them. But, you know, they were glad because they were trying to figure out what in the heck was going on in the warehouse sector. And, you know, I like to talk about our system of systems. And I think what's really been front and center for all of us is just really the codependency. And I think that that's just been magnified for all of us. So the warehouse logistics real estate is the way, the common vernacular that we talk about today. We don't really talk about warehouse distribution anymore. It's all about logistics. And I think it is, you know, we've seen our changes in our lifestyle from the COVID and the shelter in place, safer at home. And, you know, everything changed. I've seen anywhere from 5 to 10% increase in the e-commerce numbers. I'm going to guess it's even higher for some of us. And, you know, initially we saw some panic buying. And then, you know, I was chatting with Jean earlier and I said, you know, you guys got to look out because we all had a lot of time to be home and clean out our closets. We did spring cleaning like never before. So we're that consumer demand, I believe, will, you know, stay strong, even though we are looking forward to the days when we can go out to an entertainment venue or to a movie or even out to a restaurant anymore. But the sector, what we've seen primarily from our perspective is just very little vacancy. And that's really held true since the 2008. And, it's been an interesting journey because as commercial real estate developers, we looked at the subprime market that was the reason for our spiraling down in 2008. We were very smug, thinking we don't do any commercial, we don't do any residential, so we don't need to worry. Well, guess what? We all had to worry with that. But what we saw was just this tremendous recovery in the logistics space. And it's just continued. So the sweet spot now really relates to the e-commerce and the big fulfillment centers. And to do e-commerce, we need more space and more employees. So I think we'll continue to see that.
Are the warehouses really as full as everyone makes them out to be right now?
I think, generally speaking, they're darn full, if I could say that. But I think you also see, those in definitely the e-commerce space. We're all spoiled now. We think we can get things immediately, and so we ask for it. But yeah, generally speaking, they're pretty full. And this time of year, our spring cubes are always take more space. We order up our patio furniture of late. It's been our exercise equipment, and so we've had some bulky items there. So yeah, generally speaking, they're full. We build them taller. We're up 40-foot clear height when, the gold standard for a long time was 28. And then we moved to 32, and then we just leaped up to 40 and large, But that said, there's also a real push because we need to get goods closer to the consumers. So we also see every distribution pattern you could imagine.
Fran, we've talked a lot on this monthly update of the impact to the waterfront worker. During COVID-19, both from an illness perspective as well as precautionary, what has changed in the workflow with our women and men on the ground at the warehouses?
We have labor shortages. We have felt it every sector. COVID is, it's affected every sector, and our logistics sector is no different. So we've had, we've desperately, and you and I have worked together a lot to make sure that we got the sanitizers, the protective gear, to make sure that we were sharing best practices. But it's been a challenge. And then, you've had extended unemployment. And frankly, there's some folks that have chosen to stay home. So I'm hoping that we get everybody back in school, back to work. And labor is a challenge all along the supply chain, and vaccinations are a challenge. We have long been collectively advocating for the entire supply chain worker to be vaccinated. And we always seem to be in 1B tier when we're doing 1A. And then we have a change and, decide that we're going to vaccinate all of the most at risk folks. So we've got a long way to go, I think, to get all of our supply chain workers vaccinated. So that's on top of my wish list, really.
We share that as well. Last question, Fran. You have a unique vantage point nationwide over both the international and domestic transportation networks. It is sometimes like a crystal ball, but what do you see over the next 3 to 6 months in your sector?
I say we've got cholesterol in our arteries. And we've had a hiccup. I think it was New York Times a week ago or something talked about what the pandemic had done to our choreography. And I describe our system of systems as an orchestra with no conductor and lots of first violins. And I think right now we've got some cholesterol pockets that we need to work through. I'm hoping, if I could put it into March Madness, terms that we can maybe get a little full court press come together. We've seen the power of what we can do, and really hats off to the information sharing, because I can tell you on our warehouse side, data is king. And I think that holds for all of our supply chain partners. But we've seen what we can do when we really get those lines of communications. We get everybody leaning in to really help us solve our mission, which is delivering the goods to our communities and our businesses.
Great, thanks. And as you can see, a leader that many of us look up to for advice and guidance, and most importantly, partnering during these difficult times. Fran Inman of Majestic Realty. Thank you, Fran. And hopefully you can stick around just a little bit longer to field some questions. Great, that would be wonderful. Philip, can we now turn to the media that's participating today?
Yes, thank you, Gene. And for those media who want to ask questions, please do so by typing them into the chat room, and also put in your name and affiliation if you would, please. First question is from Dan Ronan at Transport Topics. This is for Fran. Fran, it seems like we are seeing more and more real estate being sold and repurposed for warehouse space across the country. Is there any slowdown coming in the months or years ahead?
I don't really think so. I'm bullish on the logistics real estate sector for the time to come, and I don't really see that changing. One thing that we haven't talked much about is really the cost of capital, and clearly our inventory levels have a strong correlation to the cost of capital, and we've seen unusually low capital expenditures for quite some time now. So I don't see that changing. I think that looking at how the distribution channels change, bricks and mortar retail, and we actually own several shopping centers. We call them lifestyle centers. We have seen, before COVID, bricks and mortar was trying to figure out what it was going to look like in the future. And, COVID just accelerated some of those companies that were on the brink. They actually stepped into the bankruptcy. But we'll retool and refigure that out. People still need to come together. They want to come together. But I think we've been spoiled, in my opinion, in terms of I don't really need to go to the market and pick up paper towels and toilet paper anymore. I can order them and they'll show up on my front porch.
Thank you, Fran. The next question is from Craig at KNX. This is addressed to Gene. Gene, do you have any numbers on port jobs that may have been displaced or lost as a result of the decrease in exports? And what are the items, quote, not leaving on these ships?
Hi, Craig. Good to hear from you as always. The port jobs related to the work on the waterfront and the broader region aren't just necessarily focused on a segment, for example, imports or exports. And our clip right now that we've been running on that 7-month import surge really brings a lot of work down to our docks, our warehouses, maintenance and repair efforts, etc. So right now, I can tell you that we haven't lost work, but the question would be, could we have gained some work if exports continued to move in an uptick direction? Like many had hoped for at this point in time. So that's the question we'll continue to look for answers on. And as we've called for a unique focus on what we could do to get some of the 10 million Americans who are out of work back onto jobs and into the export sector, where we can connect manufacturing broadly, automotive, and our agricultural sectors back into the international community. Great question. We'll continue to watch that closely.
Gene, Craig's follow-up.
Can I jump in just a little bit there?
Please.
Moving air just doesn't feel good to me. So I think where we get ourselves better, back aligned with more balance of trade. Clearly, the state of California has a wonderful agricultural industry, and I think it's really important to us to, come back together with our efficiency task forces that we have in place. They've gotten distracted a little bit from time to time, but I think we all need to really, that should be a goal for all of us.
Thank you. And Craig's follow-up question is, have U.S. consumer buying habits changed at all? At the start of the pandemic, we saw a lot of workout equipment arriving at the port. Gene?
We're continuing, Craig, to see a lot of retail goods, those finished products that we buy at our big box retailers, our home improvement stores, and others. The workout equipment and athleisure wear continues to be strong, as do appliances, folks who are updating their kitchens or washers and dryers, building materials for those who are doing a little bit of work at home. In addition to working on our cars, tires are up a tremendous amount this year. Folks are trying to get the best mileage they can out of their existing automobiles. And as we know, the original equipment manufacturers had a dip in production last year, but that seems to be coming back strong. So we'll probably see other segments with respect to both aftermarket and parts to be built into the newer vehicles rising as well.
Thank you. The next question is for Fran. This comes from Eric Watkins at Lloyd's List. Assuming we are coming into a new normal, which is driven by e-commerce without peak seasons, what is going to be the new normal for warehouse and distribution space in the region and around the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach?
I think we'll get to 24/7, always on, all the time. You know, data sharing, there was a question or conversation about data being king and data sharing. And Gina's talked a lot about the work and the leadership. Really, we started with the GE Transportation Portal, I think, when we first launched that several years ago. But I think we're going to continue to see a lot more integration and a lot more, hopefully, efficiency from everybody sharing data. Love to have our sister port here in Long Beach joining in that. And, you know, I think if you look at appointment systems, I mean, I think that wherever we can smooth the hiccups out, we'll all be better off for that. But I just don't see us going back. It's like we've taken the lid off. And you know, I planted a garden, but we really couldn't. You know, it was great when I had my huge crop of tomatoes, but it wouldn't carry us forever. And then one thing Jean didn't mention, that's just an aside, I think when we were all home, we all got into the pets again. So I don't know about everybody else, but, you know, we got a new puppy. So if you look at the consumption of pet-related merchandise, I mean, it's just amazing.
Fran, following up on that, this is Paul, and I believe it's Paul Avery from World Cargo News. He said that you mentioned that data is king. The Port of Long Beach is not sharing data through the Port Optimizer and its related tools. Do you see any problems or issues with only being able to access data on the part of the San Pedro Gateway through the Port of LA on the Optimizer? Would you like to see Long Beach join?
I would love to see an integrated, holistic system. I think it would be in everybody's best interest. And I think, you know, we launched that. There's room for improvement. We can always improve. Our supply chain is dynamic, so continuous process improvement. But it's difficult. You know, we have cargo alliances. The world has changed, and we all have to adapt. And so to be able to really be empowered, we need to, they're trying to get me to another meeting there. I don't want to go to another meeting. You know, I think to really be empowered, we do want to encourage the sharing of information. And, you know, Gina and I had a good discussion about it. You know, do you put it on the website or do you push it out? And, you know, when we have our men and women that are constantly on the go, so to speak, to keep our cargo moving, I think we've got to be able to figure out a way not to bog them down, but to give them the relevant data they need. And I can tell you, my warehouse operators, for the most part, they're watching the tracker to see how many container vessels out there, because they can all do the math. And so for them to hear today that there's only 17 vessels, they'll take a little deep breath and think maybe we can get a little bit of this cholesterol out of our arteries here as we move the spring merchandise out.
Great. Thank you, Fran. We have several more questions from the media. Jean, this one is for you. It's from Ann Lee Ellingenson at LA Biz. Jean, last month you mentioned that the Port of LA was holding discussions about diverting traffic to other ports to help address the backlog. Could you provide an update on that strategy?
Yeah, Ann Lee, thanks for joining. There were a couple of carriers that made some pretty big announcements. Hapag-Lloyd rearranging 11 vessel sailings, CMA CGM moving an expedited service up to Oakland, and another Southeast Asia service up to the Pacific Northwest. But all ports in the country of east-west significance are very full right now. We've seen the reports on anchorage out of Oakland, the cut and runs out of Seattle, Tacoma, the anchorage in the southeast. So it's not very easy, and I explained this to a number of folks early on, that we were going to try to pull every lever we could. And if diverting temporarily some cargo to allow us to catch our breath and dig out was a plan, albeit an unpopular one, I was willing to take that opportunity because we could not slow down the American supply chain. But our options are very limited. And with the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach accounting for 17.5 million TEUs annualized, there's not too many other places that can take big swaths of cargo almost immediately by comparison purposes. So we'll continue to look at everything. In the remarks here today, I talked about segmenting the cargo as well. About 1/3 of all of our international container business is destined for the Inland Empire of Southern California. If we can carve that out, move more of it overnight or when traffic is less busy on our roads, freeways, and here at the gates of the port, I think we stand an opportunity to have a little more fluidity during the traditional 8 to 5 and 6 to 3 p.m. shifts that our labor partners work with on a regular basis. So there are a number of issues we're working on and just trying to find that right combination as we continue to work through each day. Thanks for the question, Ann Lee.
Gina, on a similar topic, Jeff Berman from Logistics Management asks, given how unusual 2020 was, coupled with ongoing strain on the supply chain, what are some of the key objectives for the ports, ocean liners, BCOs heading into peak season?
Thanks, Jeff, and glad you could join again today. First and foremost, we've got to clean up the backlog and return some semblance of schedule integrity to the system. It's not just beholden upon the port, but as Fran says, all of our partners trying to work back to that level of certainty that our mutual customers deserve. Second, as we do that, we're going to have to make a pretty quick pivot this summertime to the traditional uptick in cargo that usually starts on or around August 1. And that'll be product that's coming in for back to school, Halloween, as well as our year-end holidays. So we've got to get this situated where we might not have much time in between, but we're starting to see some encouraging looks at where this volume is going. Again, reporting out to you just shy of 800,000 TEUs is a little bit different than the way we looked in December and November of last year. So trying to squeeze every hour of work opportunity that we can to help catch up in the system is really what we're focused on. And just in closing on this question, Jeff, as I've shared with you previously, I'm so heartened by everybody trying to chip in, from the cargo owners to the truck community, longshore men and women, the warehouse community, and broadly the supply chain and logisticians groups. We're really pulling in the same direction. Yeah, we'll have our debates every now and then, but it's all about taking this vast amount of cargo to supply the American consumer during this pandemic that everyone is focused on today.
Thank you. Chris Ancarlo at KFI AM 640 asks, Gene, with stimulus checks coming into bank accounts, are we seeing spikes in specific sectors, i.e. home improvement? Are you expecting an immediate impact from this stimulus on shipping demand, or will the increased spending draw down on products that have already been imported?
Now, the checks just started reaching bank accounts last weekend. Some of the paper checks are said now to be able to arrive at homes by the end of this month. I think you'll see that money deployed right away into the economy. Folks have got to catch up on bills, pay off Christmas credit card bills, and start spending money on what their kids are going to need to go back to school as those schools open, not just here in the region, but across the country. So it's our belief, as well as some of the top economists in the nation, that that money is going to float right into the economy and continue to build the momentum here in year 2021. Thanks for the question. Appreciate it.
I think that light at the end of the vaccination tunnel gives folks hope. And, you know, it was a crazy year for all of us with lots of uncertainty. And I think that our Biden administration delivering on their promised focus of getting everybody vaccinated gives our nation hope. And I think that is a big inspiration for folks to, I think they'll continue to invest those dollars. And, you know, infrastructure bills, remember, we've got a lot of goods moving through our ports related to infrastructure investments as well. So it's not just all of our consumer e-commerce goods, but, you know, we've seen construction was deemed essential, at least in California. So construction continued. I served on the county's Economic Recovery Task Force, and we identified, gosh, this goes back to last June, but more than $100 billion worth of capital projects across LA County. So we've got a lot of capital investment. Our transportation partners have been trying to take advantage of some reduced traffic flows and get some project work done. So I think we'll continue to be busy.
Thank you, Fran. Next question comes from Matt Leonard at Supply Chain Dive. We've heard more companies mentioning issues like supply chain bottlenecks and port congestion in recent earnings calls. What is the latest that you are hearing from shippers when it comes to managing these disruptions? Are they changing buying patterns, or are they just accepting longer lead times? Gene, would you like to start?
Sure. A lot of conversation around this, Matt, and thank you again for joining today. We're seeing the conversation develop around what can we do to improve the efficiencies, especially when we're at historic record cargo volume. No port in the history of the Western Hemisphere has moved an average of 900,000 container units for 7 consecutive months. So how we try to grow into that, what we do with our partners to try to find those efficiencies, really are the topics that we're discussing today. Some are looking for alternative sourcing, albeit that is a little bit difficult, as we witnessed from the trade tensions during the past presidential administration. We're also seeing folks look at near and onshoring opportunities. That creates complexity as well with respect to cost and skilled labor. So there are a number of conversations happening. What we try to do, and I think what's emblematic in some of these earnings calls, is that we try to take what we've learned from difficult situations and apply it to a better future for all of us in the supply chain business. I don't think there's going to be one lever that we can push or pull, for that matter, to be able to find ourselves never talking about port congestion again. But as we talked about here in this setting many times, it's a confluence of events that hit all at one time. From a 100-year pandemic to a manufacturing squeeze and a consumer buying pattern that had never been anticipated before, albeit while we've got to find a way to grow exports and put folks back into jobs here in the States.
Plus weather. You know, we haven't talked at all about the weather impacts, but, you know, we had frozen pipes in our warehouses, distribution centers in Laredo, Texas, and Houston. We had a big hiccup there. So I think, you know, our San Pedro Bay ports, we really don't talk enough about the tremendous advantage we have with weather in terms of our gateway.
Thank you. This question comes from Kim Link-Wills at FreightWaves for Gene. This week, drivers working for Container Connection filed a complaint against that company alleging that COVID-19 prevention measures are not in place and drivers are jeopardizing their health driving to and from the port complex. Is there anything the port can do in this situation? And along those lines, are truckers and longshoremen being vaccinated?
Hi, Kim. Thanks again for joining, as you do every month. I think that you've heard me say time and again in this and other public forums that the health and safety of our workforce is number one. We can't do anything without that. And we've gone through all the trials and tribulations of the last 12 months while trying to find any way possible, from getting cleaning solution from the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to the PPE that we've distributed through Logistics Victory Los Angeles, more than 6 million units, to 36 Los Angeles area hospitals and more than 166 skilled nursing facilities. Through the generous donations of people like the Apple Corporation, as well as CMA CGM, the shipping giant out of Marseille, France, and Harbor Freight and Tools, we've been able to donate a lot of PPE out to the farm workers and other essential workers throughout the industry. We've done a tremendous job with the Trucking Association and with the Teamsters, handing out face masks, gloves, and other PPE so workers can be protected. This is an issue of drivers who are not being represented and looking for support from their employers, their independent contractors, and leading the way along this same mantra that the workers' health and safety must come first. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti said early on, through his office, that we would require all coming to this port complex to have that protective equipment and those face masks, and which is why we've stood up so strongly for our workers, and that must continue. And if there are complaints to be lodged, I am sure that Cal OSHA will look into these as seriously as they've looked into others and give us recommendations as a community on how we can improve. But the Port and Love LA will continue to stand behind these essential workers with the PPE that they need. We may not have enough to cover everyone. We're meant to fill those gaps. The employers have got to step up and do the same. On the vaccination front, it looks like as of right now, after several vaccination runs with the great city of Long Beach and the leadership of Mayor Garcia, what we've done here in Los Angeles over the past couple weeks, we're starting to get a critical mass of registered longshore workers vaccinated, and others, as I mentioned, with the Teamster and Los Angeles County Federation of Labor event in Carson just last Friday. So we're chipping away as we go. It can't happen fast enough, but everyone once again is pulling in the same direction. And our call is for all transportation workers in the state and our region specifically to be vaccinated as soon as possible. Those men and women have been out on the job since before the emergency orders went into place, and they've answered the bell every day since. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Gene. We've got a couple. We'll take two more questions and wrap up in a couple of minutes. This one is for Fran from Jeff at Logistics Management. Fran, what do you think are the biggest post-pandemic changes in the logistics warehouse market, given the ongoing and possibly permanent rise of e-commerce?
Well, I mean, I think it's the omni-channel distribution, as we all struggled to figure that out. Clearly, e-commerce, we've all been, those of us that work in this sector, have been studying the adoption rates, and it just got a big boost, so to speak, with all of our lifestyles. And really, frankly, things that we hadn't considered being an e-commerce item became everything was fair game, I think, for e-commerce. So I think we'll continue to see that. I just don't see us going back to anything else except figuring out how to get goods to market and, in a efficient and quick manner.
Thank you, Fran. A couple of questions that came in, Gene, on this topic, and I think we'll make this the last question. Concern about availability of empty containers for the use of agricultural exports. Is there any sign of increased availability for ag exports, and if so, when?
Okay. As you could see from our numbers that we report out on every month, the empty containers being repositioned or pre-positioned back to Asia to get ready for the next round of American imports are plentiful. More than 280,000 again this month. There are containers available, but what we've seen is a rush to get those empties back to the manufacturing site for import back to the U.S. We've got to find an equilibrium or a happy medium. Much has been made in the recent weeks and months from the agriculture community, some from the manufacturing sector as well. And we know there's added transit time on the front end to pick up those goods and added on the delivery side in Asia to get them to the buyer. But we've got to find a happy medium because it's going to put people to work. It's going to help balance our trade a little better, although we'll never be really balanced here in the foreseeable future in Los Angeles. But with every export container we get, we can help the asset providers and the staffing levels become a little more attuned to those round-trip economics that we're all searching for. So it'll be continued conversation within the industry. There is oversight and requests out to the Federal Maritime Commission for investigation and a look-see into what's taking place on the ground. But we need action now, and we need to continue to work as leaders in the industry to help the American exporter.
Thank you, Gene and Fran, for answering all the questions from the media. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Gene to make any closing remarks.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you, Fran. In closing, it's been well documented that we recently passed the one-year mark of this pandemic. No doubt, it has been a long, difficult journey with challenges and much sorrow along the way. As we approach the spring, there is a collective sense of optimism as more people get vaccinated and businesses begin to open. Some here in Los Angeles may even be lucky enough to attend opening day at Dodger Stadium and at ballparks across this great nation. At the same time, we can't let our guard down. We in the supply chain are working hard to get transportation workers vaccinated and to pay even more attention to the health and safety of this great workforce that got us through such a difficult period in our nation's history. Our industry and partners have introduced forward-thinking ideas in the areas of technology to address new challenges that have emerged. If we continue to follow the advice of the medical community together, we will get to the other side of COVID-19 and take off from there. In the meantime, thank you again for joining us. Please continue to stay safe, and we'll talk again soon.